Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I've been asked by Shri Madhav Gopinath Das, who is standing here, you don't want to sit down, to speak specifically on issues that are often raised by, or doubts that are often in the minds of people from South India who come in contact with our Krishna consciousness movement. Now these issues, they're all philosophical and cultural issues which can be discussed by all persons, even not from India, or also from North India, which pertain to the understanding of Krishna consciousness. So those who are not from South India can also stay and listen. And some of them are pan-India issues, and some are particularly raised by persons from South India. So there are quite a few, and it's not possible in a short time to cover them all. Who's from a South Indian background? Yeah, okay. Mostly. All the good brains that were, the Brahmin brains that were used previously for studying Shastra are now being used for working for some company, working for some beefeater. Anyway, better to apply the intelligence to understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. What is the meaning of life? So, you're all coming here, pious people, which presumably most of you by family background are what is called Hindu, for want of a better term. Jawaharlal Nehru defined Hindu as an inhabitant of India who is not a Sikh, Parsi, Jain, Buddhist, Christian or Muslim. So he defined by negative definition. But that definition doesn't fit anymore, does it? Difficult to define. Anyway, without trying to define what is a Hindu, we can say you're all basically from Hindu background and pious enough to be interested in this culture of Krishna consciousness, but maybe having some doubts about it. Now, one pan-India issue, that means not confined only to South India, is that of demigod worship, what we call demigods, and what Hindus in English call all the gods. We say Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ekale Ishvara Krishna ar sabhritta jare joiche nache tare toiche kare nritta. Krishna is the only Supreme Controller. All others are His servants. He makes them dance. They dance in the way that He desires. In other words, they're all under His control. Now, the general outlook among Hindus, although it's a very broad, Hinduism is, there are many different strains and understandings, but the general outlook is that there are many gods, and that Krishna or Vishnu is only one of them. However, this is not the conclusion of Shastra. Actually, in Shastra, in many places, it's stated that different gods are supreme. In some parts of the Vedas, it is stated that Indra is supreme. In some parts of the Vedas, it is said that Agni is supreme. In some parts of the Vedas, it is said that Varuna is supreme. Although the worship of Indra, Agni or Varuna is not very popular in modern India, but these statements are there. So to understand all of this, it's quite a big topic actually. It's not beginner stuff to understand all the complexities of the Vedic message. In brief, in summary, we can say, quoting from Bhagavad Gita, which is considered the essence of all Vedic knowledge. In there, Lord Krishna says, Vedaischa sarver aham eva vedyaha. In all the Vedas, Veda means knowledge, the object of knowledge is Krishna. And he states, Matah parataram nanyat kinchid asti. There is nothing superior to me, even slightly. Aham sarvasya prabhavaha. I am the source of everything. Aham adir hi devanam. I am the source of all the devas, or gods. And he, having quoted all these verses, that Krishna is supreme, we should also quote verses in which Lord Krishna specifically addresses the issue of worshipping other gods. He says, Kamaistaistaya hritagyana prapadyante devataha. He says that those who are impelled by material desire or lust, who are hritagyana, which means that their knowledge is spoiled, they don't have proper knowledge, they surrender to other gods. And antavattu palam tesham tad bhavatyalpametasam. He says that those who worship other gods are alpametas. It means small intelligence, or foolish, to put it clearly. Because the result they get from doing so is very little. We can worship different gods. Kangshanta karmanam siddhim yajanta iha devataha kshipram hi manushe loke kshipram hi manusham loke siddhir bhavati karmaja. Those who are interested in the karma kanda, or the path of work, they quickly get results by worshipping the different gods. But that result is only material. So whatever you get doesn't last. We can get a result. We worship different gods for good health, getting lots of money, peaceful family life, beautiful wife, or good husband. All these are possible to attain. And even happiness in a future life, going to heaven, Swarga Loka. But all this is temporary. Therefore, Lord Krishna dismisses it as foolish attempt. Now, we may say then, why are different gods recommended? Why is that in the Vedas? And apart from the different gods question, especially everywhere, but especially in Tamil Nadu, there are many who will say that Lord Shiva is supreme. And even we find in Mahabharata that Lord Krishna sometimes states Lord Shiva, that he is supreme. He is known as Parameshwar, the supreme Lord, supreme controller. And there's the famous incident of Lord Rama, who is Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, worshipping Lord Shiva at Rameshwara. Because Ravana, who he was about to attack and kill, was known as a devotee of Lord Shiva. So it appears that Lord Vishnu, not only appears, but actually that story is not in the original Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana. But it's in other versions of Ramayana, Kamba Ramayana, etc. So that may be accepted, because when Krishna comes to this world as Rama and in various forms, he may worship the demigods, but that doesn't mean that they are supreme. Or he may, in certain circumstances, encourage the worship of demigods. Lord Shiva is known as Parameshwar. Lord Vishnu is also known as Parameshwar. But if the Shastric conclusion is considered, I'm quoting from Bhagavad Gita, then we can understand that Lord Shiva is the supreme controller within a limited sphere, within the material world, whereas the overall supreme is Krishna. Lord Shiva is always meditating. Who is he meditating on? Lord Sankarshan, who is in the form of Lord Vishnu. So Lord Shiva, he's supreme, that's true. Just like in this civic center, if the manager comes in, then the lower workers will say, well, he's the boss, or she's the boss. Nowadays, it's more likely to be a she than a he. So that's true. He's number one. She's number one. That's true. But it's within a limited sphere. Whereas Krishna is the overall supreme. Now for the materialistic people, from their perspective, actually Lord Shiva is supreme. Because he has a more direct function in the material world, whereas Lord Krishna is the supreme enjoyer in the spiritual world, which is superior to the material world. Cell phones off, please. Thank you very much. Everyone who has a cell phone, everyone has a cell phone. No, you don't. I don't also. What is the way to get shanti? Get rid of your cell phone. It's practical advice. Anyway, at least while you're here, please turn it off. So, Lord Krishna may recommend to worship Lord Shiva, but that's for persons at a certain level, and even Vaishnavas, we don't reject Lord Shiva, but we respect him as the greatest Vaishnava. Vaishnavanang yatha shambhu. He is known as the greatest Vaishnava, and we respect him as such. But pure devotees of Krishna, persons who are interested in the highest goal of life, they center their worship, they focus it completely on Krishna, and they can also respect the demigods. They're called demigods because they're lesser gods. Their godliness is attained from their relationship with Vishnu. They're not independently gods. So they worship the demigods, not exactly worship, but they offer respect to, because they are representatives of Lord Vishnu. Now then, why is it stated in different parts of the Shastra that different demigods are supreme? Because that is required for different people at different levels. If they're not ready to come to the fully spiritual platform, then better than being atheistic is to worship the demigods. That is the beginning of recognition that there are superior powers to me. To Krishna. There are superior powers than Krishna. I am getting mixed up. Superior powers is a recognition that there are living beings who are superior to me. I'm dependent on light, heat, rain. So all this is administered by the demigods. So that's a beginning for materialistic people. They should worship demigods. Lord Krishna states this in Bhagavad Gita, that yo yang tanang bhakta shraddhaya chitam ichchati tasya achalang shraddham tam eva vididhamyaham. That persons who are on the level of demigod worship, who haven't come to the higher level, for them, Lord Krishna says, that faith that they have in the demigods, I, Lord Krishna, who is Antaryami, Paramatma, the super soul in everyone's heart, he makes that faith strong, because that's required for people on that level. But for those who are interested in understanding the highest knowledge, then they should come to after worshipping demigods for many lifetimes and being interested in material boons, then one should come to this platform, the platform that after going through all the Vedas, in the Vedas there's Purva Mimamsa, which is concerned with getting material gains. by performing sacrifices and worshipping different demigods. So, in the Purvamimamsa, or in the Vedic literature, that is stated that Indra is supreme, Varuna is supreme, Agni is supreme, Vishnu is supreme, all this. But at Uttaramimamsa, when one becomes more intelligent, one comes to the platform, as stated in the beginning of Vedanta Sutra, Athato Brahma Jignasa. Now one should inquire into the absolute truth. So far, we have inquired into how to worship different gods for the sake of material benefit. Now we should be intelligent enough to understand that worshipping different gods, that gives us material benefit, but this material world is dukkhalayama shashvatam. As Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, everything in this world is miserable, everything in this world is temporary, therefore we should consider what is the highest truth. The highest truth is also described in Vedanta Sutra, Janmadhyasya yataha, the absolute truth is the source of all emanations. That absolute truth, the source of everything, is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the topmost Vedic literature, as Vasudeva, Krishna. He is the supreme object of meditation. So, we're going through a lot of stuff here because very quickly. You probably, if you want to understand this philosophically, then it's more than we can say in a short lecture. But you can take also this Bhagavad Gita as it is, and science of self-realization, and study this in more depth. We are approaching you here. We want to try to convince you. Of course, many of you are already convinced, but then you may want to take these arguments or pramanas, evidences for convincing others in future. So it may be useful for those who are already convinced. Yeah, you can study all this. We're approaching you. We're not just saying you have to believe in this, not sentimentally. We're inviting you to apply your intelligence to understand Shastra. Shastra is the knowledge by which we can understand what are the metaphysical underpinnings of everything that's going on. You study books to understand whatever you wish to understand. If you're a software engineer, you have to read the relevant books. If you're a medicine student, then you have to read the books and have it explained also. Not just by reading books, but it requires explanation also. If you want to become a surgeon, it's not just by reading books. Someone needs a brain surgery and someone comes up and says, well, I read the book, how to do it. I'd be better off without the surgery. I'll die from brain hemorrhage rather than die from an inexperienced doctor who knows how to carve up steak, but he wants to cut up your brain like that. So it requires training also. So this is the system, amnaya. The amnaya means knowledge of reality is received from Shastra and from persons who are self-realized persons who are in a parampara, who are in a disciplic succession, who have been trained in this knowledge. So such persons are competent to present it. So the conclusion of the Shastra, the Shastra presents knowledge at various levels. So that for those who want to come to the highest level, they can understand from Srimad Bhagavatam. Savai pungsang paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje ahaituki apratihata yayatna suprasidati. That the supreme dharma is bhakti to adhoksaja. Adhoksaja is the name of Lord Vishnu or Krishna, which means he who cannot be perceived by the mundane senses, who can be understood by a totally transcendental method. And that bhakti, or devotional service, that should be without any personal motive. People go to different demigods and go to Lord Vishnu also. Give me this, give me that. Give me a visa to America. Who's from Chennai? Anyone here from Chennai? So, last time I was in Chennai, I was told there's a Ganesh Mandir who's known as Visa Ganesh. You want your American visa? Go and pray. And it must work, otherwise how would he get the name? So Ganesh is very popular because he is removing the obstacles on the path of material happiness. But there's nothing Ganesh can do to help you to get free from material distress. You get your visa to America, but it doesn't mean that everything's great in America. Everything's great means there's a lot of distress in America also. So instead of suffering various distresses in India, you can suffer various distresses in America and have a bigger income on which to do it. But still there's distress. The experience of distress is not mitigated by having a bigger paycheck on which to be miserable. You can be 10,000 rupee a month miserable or $10,000 a month miserable, but misery is misery. And however big your paycheck is, we cannot avoid the miseries of repeated birth, death, old age and disease. So an intelligent person considers this. Everything in this material world is miserable, so what is the highest goal of life? We're trying to delineate this. Actually, another question among South Indians, it just came to my mind. I'd made a mental list of the ones to go through, but another one prominent at the present time is, what about Jesus? Because money's pouring in from America to India, and especially South India, for converting Hindus into Christians. And nowadays it's not just tribals, but they're everywhere. Not just tribals and fishermen, but among all classes of society. And indeed, the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh is a Christian, and under his benign guidance, he also made the executive officer of the TTD, Tirupati Tirumala Devasthanams, a Christian, and now they want to build a big church on Tirumala to convert all the Hindus who are going there to Christians. So the question comes up, well, what about Jesus? Well, Jesus was a devotee. He's not God. That's a great mistake in Christianity. He never said, I'm God. They made a great mistake. He wasn't a meat eater like the Christians want to convert you into, if you're not already. If you're not a Hindu meat eater, they may convert you to a Christian meat eater. The Bible has been doctored. We're not just saying this, but there's good evidence of this. And practically in Christianity, there's not much philosophy. They say, believe in Jesus or you go to hell. Believe in God. But who is God? There's no knowledge of who He is. So, theologically it's very weak. If you don't believe in God, He burns you in hell forever. Well, that doesn't sound like a very merciful God, does it? Sounds like someone who's very vindictive, vengeful. Then who is God? What is our relationship with Him? There's very little information. Then there's so many things. And it was only toward the end of the 19th century that in Christian religion they admitted or they allowed that women can have souls. Before that, only men had souls. And still they don't recognize that animals have souls and that you're killing animals, but that's sinful actually. So there are so many things wrong with that. It's not a philosophical approach. The Vedic culture presents philosophical understanding of the Supreme. So it's not recommended that many Hindus, they don't have knowledge of, the knowledge is not being properly given about who is supreme or why we should worship in the temples. And a lot of modern Hinduism is really nonsensical actually. They're following there's a lot of personality cults. This is the most popular nowadays. Different Babas, and in North India there's a big Bappa, and there's Amma, and all these different personality cults. But there's this art of living and all that. It's all personality cults. They don't give scientific knowledge of what is the purpose of life. Why are we suffering in this material world? How can we get free from the suffering? So it's not surprising that with modern Hinduism so weak that people are converting to Christianity and this and that, but at least this Krishna conscious movement is meant for giving scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. We don't even claim to be Hindu because there is no term in Shastra as Hindu. Culturally you may say this is Hindu, but philosophically you should understand there's no such word as Hindu in all the Vedic literatures. This word was given by Muslims. Garv se kaho hum Hindu hai, in Hindi it said. Say it with pride, we're a Hindu. But why? Why should you? What do you mean by Hindu? It's a term given by Muslims. There's no such term in Shastra as Hindu. And Garv se kaho kyong, sharam se kaho. All the Hindus are eating meat and they've known. It's difficult to find any Hindu who knows even one verse from Bhagavad Gita. Sharam, you know what this word? It's not a Sanskrit word. It's an Urdu word, but it's the common word for shame. It's a common word in modern Hindi for shame. Otherwise the Sanskrit word is lajja. It's the same word. Shame or shyness. In Bhagavad Gita that's mentioned. Lajja. Or that's a name for Lakshmi Devi. Lajja or Lajjavati. It's a good quality, shyness, but it also means shame. It is a shame that Hindus, they don't know what is their culture and therefore they're misled into so many cheap personality cults. There was another one in Pune, Osho, and very bad actually. That one in particular. So, then another common with this understanding all the gods are the same, another very common misconception in South India, North India and all over the world is that ultimately we are all one with God. That there are many gods, but by meditation we can also become God and everything is all the same. I am one and all is one. So there are statements in the Shastra that appear like that. Soham. No, that's not in Shastra. That's just what Mayavadis say. Eko Brahma Dvitiyam Nasti. There's only Brahma and no... Brahma means the Supreme Truth and no second. So people take that to mean that there's only Brahman and everything else is an illusion. But what it means is that there's only one Supreme Truth. And there's no one on the same level as him, as Arjuna states in Bhagavad Gita to Lord Krishna, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan. You are the Supreme Brahma, Supreme Truth. You are the Supreme Dhamma, the Supreme Abode. You are the Supreme Pure. So if we carefully study Shastra, we'll find that this idea that ultimately everything is one, it is not upheld by Shastra. And actually it doesn't make sense either. What is the meaning that ultimately everything is one? What does it mean? I am you and you are me. How is that? If I am hungry, and I may say to you, I am hungry, and you can say that, well, it doesn't matter because I just ate a big meal. Yeah, well, what about me? But you are me. So I don't have to feed you. You're the guest in my house, and I'm just going to sit down and eat a big meal, and then I don't have to feed you because you are me. And it'll save money. But it doesn't work. Well, they say, well, in the illusory state, there is a feeling of duality, but none of this actually exists. But if there is an illusory state, it means that the illusory state is different from what they call the realized state. So immediately there's two-ness. Where is the oneness? They say in the realized state, Gyan, Gyeya and Gyata, knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the perceiver of knowledge, they all become one. But how is that possible? So, the real message of Shastra is that there is the Supreme Lord, and we are all His servants. We are all part and parcel of Him. He is Satchidanandamai, He is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and so are we. But in this material state, we are in this material condition because of having forgotten Him. We can revive our relationship with Him by the process of bhakti. Bhakti leads to bhakti. Bhakti performed in this world, that leads us to perform bhakti eternally in the spiritual world. There is a spiritual world. That is the abode of Krishna. Now another question that often comes, and this is more common in South India, is that, well, Krishna is a form of Vishnu. Krishna is not the supreme form. He's a form of Vishnu, but the highest form is that of Narayana, with 4 hands. And Krishna is an avatar. Well, in one sense, Krishna is. He appears as an avatar of Vishnu, but ultimately, the Vishnu forms also come from Krishna. This is the ultimate message of Shastra, as Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita. Aham sarvasya prabhava. I am the source of everything, including the Narayan forms. Srimad Bhagavatam also says, Ete changsha kala pungsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Of all the forms of the Purush, of the Vishnu form, the Karnadakshay Vishnu, Garbhadakshay Vishnu, Kshiradakshay Vishnu, all the forms which are described in that chapter, the various Vishnu avatars, they are described, but Krishna is the original form. And there's much evidence of that in Srimad Bhagavatam. We find the Bhoma Purush, the Mahavishnu. He is making some arrangement by which Krishna comes to him because he wants to have darshan of Krishna. So ultimately Krishna is the supreme form. Lakshmi Narayan is the form of Krishna, who are majestic. They look like God, don't they? They're majestic, standing like that. But Radha, Krishna, they don't seem to be so much like God because they have simple lila pastimes in the forest of Vrindavan. Whereas Lakshmi Narayan, he is Vaikuntanath, very opulent. He is worshipped by bowing down very seriously, very gravely. Whereas in worship of Krishna, there is a lot of singing and dancing, which especially in South, that's the difference between North India and South India. Generally all over North India, people like to, in worship, they like to sing and dance, and especially in the Gauriya Vaishnava tradition, that coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the very essence of bhakti is promoted as Sankirtan, singing the praise of Krishna, chanting His names, and dancing. Whereas in South India, of course, there's also kirtan, but in the temples it's very grave. Om Namo Narayanaya. And very grave like this. Now, we're not against this. This is wonderful. We very much like this. I have this book on pilgrimage in Holy India describing several of the holy places I visited. I personally visited many of the holy places. Actually, all the major Vishnu tirthas all over India, and many of the major Shaiva tirthas also, for that matter. So many times, I don't even know how many times, I can't count how many times I went to Tirupati, Tirumala, and many times also to Srirangam. I've stayed there. I stayed in Tirumala, up on the hill for 10 weeks at one time. In Srirangam, 2 weeks. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed 4 months in Srirangam. And so many. All over. All over, all the holy places. There's so many Divya Deshams of the Ramanuja Sampradaya. So many of these holy places I visited. And our devotees, we visit, and we're very happy to visit all these places and see how the worship of the Lord is going on. We offer our respects to the Lord as Ranganath, as Varadaraja in Kanchipuram, as Parthasarathi in Chennai, as Srinivas Govinda Balaji in Tirumala, as Ananta Padmanabham in Tiruvananthapuram, and like this. We visit, but we visit these temples, we offer our respects, and we're also received very nicely by the priests in all these temples. But our particular mode of worship is by singing and dancing. We also have temple worship, deity worship. But that also in a dressing the deities very nicely. It's a different style, that's all. And so why is this? Well, the understanding is that Krishna is Leela Purushottam. Lord Rama, he is known as Maryada Purushottam. And Lord Vishnu as Aishwarya Purushottam. Lord Rama is known as Maryada Purushottam, the Supreme Lord, Supreme Person, who shows the path of proper behavior. He demonstrates that to the world. And Lord Vishnu is Aishwarya Purushottam. He demonstrates great opulence. And Krishna is Leela Purushottam, or Prem Purushottam. He shows wonderful pastimes of loving affairs. So this is understood, although it might appear that Lord Vishnu is superior to Lord Krishna because he's very majestic. Actually, it's round the other way. We can understand it like this, that a big king, when he's in court, he's very majestic. Everyone has to follow his order. So they relate to him like this. The king, Maharaj ki jai ho, they're very respectful to him. And he's also very formal in the court. He might joke a little bit. But generally in the court, the mood is very grave. But then when he goes into his inner quarters with his family members, then he's joking, and even his son may get on his lap and pull his mustache. You can't do that in the court. If you do that in the court, you'll have your head chopped off. But in his own private quarters, if his son comes and pulls his mustache, he's very happy. This is because this is an exchange of love, isn't it? So from the king's point of view, he's both the king on the throne, and he's inside in his own private quarters with his family members, but from his own point of view, he's happier in the private quarters. Because there's more, the exchange is more loving. Now we're all servants of God, but the most intimate service can be rendered by family members, or those who are very close friends. Someone who's a school friend of the Prime Minister, even if they were very intimate friends when they were at school, then even now when they meet, now he's become the Prime Minister and someone else is, maybe just doing a job in an office or something. But when they meet, they relate to each other by their old friendship. They see each other according to their old friendship more than he's the Prime Minister. If they're in a formal setting, then the friend has to respect him as the Prime Minister. But when they're together, they're just old buddies, old friends like that. And even the old friend can joke at him. They can make some jokes at his expense. So it's a more intimate relationship, and that intimate relationship gives more pleasure to the king or the Prime Minister than does the formal relationship. So Krishna is the Supreme Lord because, or the topmost form of the Supreme Lord, because one, in that form, in that Vrindavan Leela especially, one can come very close to him. Worshipping Lakshmi Narayan means they're at a great distance, one can bow down to them, one cannot come very close. But in relationship with Radha and Krishna, Radha means she is the original form of all the Lakshmis, and she gives the greatest pleasure to Krishna by her intimate, loving relationship with him. So, on this understanding, it's a very deep philosophical understanding, and the deep philosophical understanding ultimately brings us to that platform where we can, by pure love, by developing pure love of Krishna, we can personally dance with him, eat with him, cook for him, in a very intimate, loving relationship. So actually, Krishna and Vishnu are the same person. Just like the Prime Minister at home and the Prime Minister in the Lok Sabha, he's the same person. In the Parliament House, he's the same person. But the very close relationship can be had with those who are in his home. Not everyone can come in his home. Or even if he invites home the foreign minister, but still there's more relaxed, but it won't be the same as the relationship with his wife and children and personal friends. So this singing and dancing, this is the ultimate expression of joy. Ultimately, religion is meant for joyfulness. Life is meant for happiness. Permanent life means, in the spiritual world, with Krishna, singing and dancing, this is the ultimate expression of happiness. People, they come to religion. Why? Because they're feeling some depression, or they have some desire they want to fulfill. Everything we do for the sake of happiness. But we don't realize that as long as we are trying to be happy independent of Bhagavan, we cannot actually be happy, because we are part and parcel of him. So ultimately, religion is that gives us the facility to be happy in our genuine, constitutional, natural, and pure way. We cannot be happy by eating meat, getting drunk. These are very low-class ways of getting happy. It's such a sad thing. We see so many people come from India, and even in India itself, they're all getting drunk. What is this getting drunk? What kind of happiness is that? It's not happiness. That's happiness. This is the This is the offering of the Western civilization to the world. Drink alcohol and then you don't know what you're saying, you don't know what you're doing, you're urinating here and there, and you wake up in the morning with $100 less and a big headache. And that's happiness? And you're also likely to kill someone if you're driving. That's all they've got to offer for all their scientific development, and ultimately what you do is you get drunk. What is this? That's not even civilized. So the Krishna conscious movement is offering to everyone a civilized, pure way of life with good principles. No meat eating. What is this also, meat eating? They're complaining. Terrorists. They destroyed the Twin Towers in New York. You're all terrorists, you rascals. You're killing millions of cows and pigs and chickens every day. That's not terrorism. Look at the animals. They don't like it. They're suffering like it. They torture them. They all their lives they torture them. They keep them penned up. And then they just slaughter them. What for? You don't need meat to live. You can be more healthy by not eating meat. It's a slaughterhouse civilization. So in this Krishna conscious movement, we recommend no meat eating, no gambling. That's another nonsense. Las Vegas, the whole city of Las Vegas runs on gambling and prostitution. What is that? A whole city built on sinful life. And that's the big attraction that so many Americans go to. What is their level of consciousness? And why are people coming from the country with the greatest spiritual culture attracted to that? Then this illicit sex. We say, no illicit sex. That means, if you're going to be, sex is alright, that's part of life. But if one can overcome that attraction, or actually it's required to overcome that attraction, that's to develop pure spiritual consciousness. But for many people, it's not going to happen very quickly. So then, get married and live respectably like a gentleman and a chaste woman. Why this? Going off boyfriends, girlfriends, get married, get divorced 3-4 times. This is not civilized life. This is the dogs in the street, they run around, they have no marriage ceremony. So for all these so-called advancement of modern life, they're just dogs and cats, that's all. Polished, sophisticated dogs and cats, that's all. So no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex. This is pure life, this is civilized life. But people they have no higher aim of life, and therefore they're addicted to all these sinful activities. So our Krishna conscious movement is meant for giving the highest knowledge, for giving a pure way of life, and for giving the directions on how we can live in this world so that we don't have to get born again. We can live very happily in this life by remembering Krishna, by worshipping Krishna. This is the ultimate goal of life. That will bring us to the spiritual world with Krishna. Ultimately, no one's Indian or non-Indian or South Indian or North Indian or Christian or Hindu or Muslim, because these are all temporary designations. We were in a different body. All of us 100 years ago were in different bodies. We may not even have been in human bodies. So, due to Maya, we consider ourselves, I am a human, or the dog thinks I am a dog, and the cat thinks I am a cat. And the Indian thinks we don't like the Pakistanis, and the Pakistanis think we don't like the Indians. And the Hindus don't like Muslims, and Muslims don't like Hindus. But ultimately, we're all part and parcel of Krishna. We're all meant to go to Krishna. And identification with the body is the cause of our material bondage. So this Krishna conscious movement gives the ancient knowledge of self-realization, which is as applicable today as it was thousands of years ago, because still we are Atma. That is still a fact. It's not that because we have computers and space rockets and genetic engineering and such advanced technology that someone sitting in America can go to work. He's in the military, he looks at all the different positions in Iraq and presses a button and bombs positions in Iraq, then he goes home for a lunch break, comes back, bombs a few more places in Iraq, and then he goes home and watches TV. So you have advanced technology, but that doesn't nullify the fact that we are all Atma. That knowledge, that fact remains the same, despite so-called scientific and technological developments. So the need of the Atma is the same. The Atma is by nature eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge, but in this mundane trap, in this material world, we think, I am this body, I belong to this country. Gratification of my senses, eat as much as possible, have as much sex as possible, live in a big house, get lots of money. This is the goal of life. But that is not true. That is foolishness. That simply leads to misery. So an intelligent person tries to find out what is the ultimate goal of life. Why are we suffering in this material world? How to get free from that suffering? Who is supreme? What is our relationship with Him? So the Vedic literatures, they give the most comprehensive, by far, knowledge of the soul. Why we are suffering in this material world? Who is supreme? Who is God? What is our relationship with Him? And it gives a practical method for redeveloping our spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness. In Kali Yuga, the present age of hypocrisy in which we presently live, the recommended method of God realization is Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nascheva, Nascheva, Nascheva Gatiranyata. In this age of Kali, there is no other way, no other way, no other way to achieve this ultimate destination, the spiritual destination, the spiritual world, than to chant the holy names, chant the holy names, chant the holy names of Lord Hari. And this is effective. We see practically. We're not just talking some pie-in-the-sky philosophy, but practically we see that people all over the world, by chanting the holy names of Krishna, become spiritually advanced and are able to give up all sinful activities, understand who is God, and become saintly people. So rather than becoming wealthy and sinful, our goal should be to be pure devotees of Krishna. That is the real wealth. And money, yeah, you may have it or not have it. It's not really such a big issue. If you have money, spend it for Krishna consciousness. That you can do. But so many Indians are coming to America to get more money, but ultimately it doesn't solve the real problems of life. It doesn't make us happy. Money, yeah, okay, you can buy a house and live in it. Alright, but you can't remain in it forever. Where will you go after the other day in New Jersey, there was some young man from Andhra Pradesh. He bought this huge house. He said, I got it cheap. It's only $620,000. Cheap? A huge house. What do you need such a big house? A big house means big problem to maintain. So, we're not much interested in getting stretch limos, and you know what stretch limo is? It's a symbol of, in America it's a symbol of being on top of the pile. If you have a car, you can put, half the block on. Well, the whole block is full of your own house, so you can sit. How many people in the stretch limo? About 15, 16, like that. Must be driven by a chauffeur. You don't drive it yourself. It's kind of cars that the president and the Pope went in one when he came here, the last Pope. So That's not the goal of life, to have a big car and a big house. The goal of life is to understand who we are, who is God, what is our relationship with Him. So, Hare Krishna. Are there any questions about this? Please. Any other points, Madhav Gopinath, for South Indians? Idlis or chapatis, that's not our discussion. Offer it to Krishna, but don't eat meat. Any other points? These just came to my mind just now. Any other points you can think of? No. Okay. All right. Yeah. Any questions, please? What is the importance of not eating onions and garlic? Well, your forefathers wouldn't have even asked this. They just didn't eat it. Actually, the question of in Shastra, it's not a question of vegetarian and non-vegetarian. This shakaha, this is a modern Hindi word, which it means vegetarian. But the term in Shastra is Amish, Niramish. Amish means forbidden foods, and Niramish means not to take them. So, Amish means meat, fish, eggs, garlic, onions, mushrooms. This is all Niramish, or sometimes it's called Amedhya. And the Amedhya includes all these things, plus alcohol and different kinds of intoxication. So, these foods, garlic and onion, that is described in Shastra, their origin is from a tamasic source, from the body of the cow. And although they are said to have some therapeutic effect, they increase tamagun. They are foods of tamagun. In Bhagavad Gita and other Shastras, it is elaborately described how everything we do and everything we eat affects our consciousness. So to understand God, it is required to be in pure consciousness. Sattva-gun is the entrance to God consciousness. But onions and garlic, they increase tamagun. That will pollute the consciousness. We cannot have clear consciousness. Or tamagun and rajagun. You can practically understand it's such a strong flavor. It's not a subtle flavor, it's a very strong flavor. So you can understand, just like by eating lots of chili also, that's rajagun, isn't it? That increases the pitta in the body so much and makes one non-peaceful by taking it. So therefore it's forbidden food. Another reason is that devotees of Lord Vishnu this is actually even a more important reason. They only take, as servants of Krishna, they only take Krishna Prasad, food offered to Krishna. And Krishna doesn't eat meat, fish, eggs, garlic, onions, or any of these things. So we only take what he takes as a servant of Krishna. And if you are eating onions and garlic and you stop eating it, then those who take it, they feel, if I don't take it, well, there's no flavor. But actually, if you stop eating it, then you'll find there is flavor. And as long as you take it, there's only that flavor because it drowns out all the other flavors. But there are so many subtle flavors. Same thing with chilies. If you throw in, half a kilo of chili powder in every sabji, then sometimes you see they make like the sambar. It's or the rasam. The only ras there is hot ras. There may be a little sourness also, but it's mainly just hot. But there are other rasas also. So all the subtle flavor of food can be appreciated by those who don't drown it out in chili powder and onions and garlic. It actually tastes a lot better. And it's actually better for health also. I mean, this garlic, they say it decreases cholesterol, but this cholesterol, that's mostly people are eating so much meat. So, or they don't do it, or they eat so much food and then they don't do any exercise. So, it's not required. Better not to take it. Yeah, any other question, please?
Raj, I have a question. This is something that
can everyone hear? You have to speak in the microphone.
A lot of times Indians that come to America have asked this. They say, well, it's okay to eat at McDonald's, Burger King, because those cows are not Deshi cows, and they're actually technically not cows because they don't have the specific symptoms or lakshanas of a cow. So a Deshi cow cannot be eaten, but a cow in America can.
Where does it say that? Where is that stated in Shastra? Lord Krishna says, Patrang pushpang palang toyam. Actually, to eat meat, that's allowed in Vedic Shastra under certain conditions, not for devotees, but for people on a lower level of consciousness. Some allowance is there to stop slaughterhouses. Not that you eat every day. That's allowed that on Amavasya, one should personally kill not a cow, not even an American cow. A goat, generally a goat or a sheep, can be offered to Kali. Even now you see, sometimes in different parts of India, they'll have the drums, and you can see the goat can understand, I'm going to be killed, and it's like a macabre kind of atmosphere. And they sacrifice, and then they eat. So that's allowed once a month. And you still get a sinful reaction. The mantra, mams, this word, mams, meat, comes from mam, unto me, saha, he. So it means, I'm eating you, in a future life you will eat me. So there's no allowance for eating meat except by offering to a lower demigod with the understanding that I'm going to get a future reaction that my body will be eaten. Or it's also allowed for kshatriyas after some sacrifice has been made. And even Brahmins we find. Some of them in Vedic culture they would eat, but that's not a very high level of Brahmanism, meat eating. It is allowed, but only the animal which is offered in sacrifice. And even the animal that's offered in sacrifice, there are so many restrictions on which animals can be eaten. So that is, some allowance is there for people who are on a lower level of consciousness. It's to restrict them. That you don't just eat meat whenever you like, however you like. Some restriction is there. That you have to do it according to a process. With the understanding that to come to a higher level, one ultimately has to come to a higher level of consciousness and only take Krishna prasad. Krishna is not a meat eater. Yeah, then? But actually anyone who says that, they're just cheating. They're just cheating themselves, actually. They're just cheating themselves. It's just an excuse. They can understand it's wrong. Just like once, in Malaysia, I was going door to door distributing books, and one Muslim man invited me into his home. And then he sat me down, we were talking, and he poured a glass of wine and started drinking it. And I said, well, isn't that banned in Islam? And he said, well, no, and he gave the Arabic word. Maybe it was sharab, I don't know. That's the Urdu word. I don't know what the Arabic word is. But he said that This term in the Quran or the Hadith or wherever it comes for not taking alcohol, that refers to a particular kind of wine that was made at that time in Arabia. And this is a different kind of wine. So it's not forbidden. And then sometimes people say, well, where in Shastra is it forbidden to smoke cigarettes and drink tea? Actually it's not, but it's understood that this also falls under the category of intoxication. It's not, and again, we should only take that which is offered to Krishna. And Krishna doesn't have tea breaks out in the forest. And he's not, quietly when Mother Yashoda is not looking, he's not snooping out to the bar and drinking wine. He's not a wine drinker. Yeah, please.
Does the system of casteism pertain to the Shastras?
Casteism is not in the Shastra, but there is Jati Dharma. That is there. Modern casteism and Varnashram Dharma. That is a different thing. That is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna mentions about Brahmans, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. He gives the duties of all of them. And he says, Chato Varnya Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. This system of divisions into 4 Varnas comes from me. But he says it is the Vibhagashaha, the Vibhaga, the division is according to Guna, personal quality, and Karma, the kind of work one is fit for. So, it's just like in modern society, there's a division of work according to one's quality. If one is fit for that, he can become a politician. If one is fit, he can become a lawyer. If one is fit, he can become a computer operator. And if you're not fit for any of those things, then you can take out the garbage. That's also required. And probably the people who are taking out the garbage, if you try to make them a computer operator, they wouldn't be so happy with it anyway, because they're big, strong people. They like to use their body. So there's a division. The division of labor is there in every society, but the Vedic system is one in which in an early age it is recognized what is the quality of the boy, and he is trained accordingly. Now we find in the traditional system it mostly went by families, because who is the priest's son, it's natural that he'll train his son to become a priest. Who is a doctor's son, he'll train his son to be a doctor. And the culture and the atmosphere they grow up in is also, if you grow up in a doctor's family, then the whole atmosphere is like that, and you're more likely to be inclined to that. So it was mostly by families, but when it wasn't restricted though. We find that, for instance, Rishabdev, he was the Supreme Lord, but he was taking the role of a Kshatriya. Among his 100 sons, the first 9 became Brahmanas, and the rest, or most of the rest, were Kshatriyas. And there are many examples of people changing caste, not following the same caste as their father. Although that was the general system. When it became rigid and based on exploit, this whole system is for mutual cooperation. Because in society you need priests, you need spiritual guides, you need administrators, you need soldiers and police, you need workers, you need craftsmen, all different kinds of people are needed. So it was a system designed for effectively dovetailing everyone's innate propensities so that the whole society can cooperate for the sake of dharma. But dharma the very beginning of dharma is based on becoming selfless. And ultimately that leads us up to the level of pure bhakti. But when it became based on exploitation, someone says, I'm a Brahmin by birth, and no one else can we have privileges, and no one else can get those privileges. The temples were given lots of land for the worship of the Lord, but the Brahmins, they thought, no, now we'll control that for our own selves, and no one else should get that. When it became based on privilege and exploitation, then it became the caste system. But the original system is very good.
Do Shudras, correct me if I'm wrong, do Shudras actually stand for untouchables?
No, untouchable is lower than Shudra. Untouchable are those who they're just like in the modern age. You get people who get into gangs and well, it's not exactly the same. But what I mean to say is they're not part of the standard society. They don't follow any Vedic principles, and they'll be they may be drinking wine, manufacturing wine, and they'll take the animals when they die. They'll take them and make them into shoes and like this. Now they don't have to be untouchable, but the society became like that. Actually, the worship of God is open to everyone. But untouchables were considered untouchable because the brahmanas, to worship in the temple, they have to maintain a high standard of purity, which people in the modern age can't imagine, because you have to touch the form of the Lord. So if you touch someone who's regularly involved with meat and alcohol, then you have to take a bath and do certain rituals for purification. Therefore, these people became known as untouchable. But no one is to be despised. No one should. If one is in a position of worshipping the Lord, he should think, well, that's my good fortune, and we should try to raise those who are in a lower platform to a higher platform. It all depends on the attitude. Now, in our temple still we're worshipping Krishna, and we also have the rule that one who's going to worship the Lord, if you touch stool, if you pass stool, you have to take a bath because it's unclean. If you touch someone who's not clean to the level of going to the altar, you have to take a bath because it requires a full standard of cleanliness to worship. To do that kind of worship of the Lord. To chant the names of Krishna, everyone can chant. But for deity worship, for archan, very high standard of cleanliness is required. So, we are supposed to have these levels of cleanliness also. But we don't despise anyone. The same person who's worshipping the deity will go into the downtown where people are drinking and going with their girlfriends and chant Hare Krishna to uplift these people. So, we shouldn't despise anyone for their bad habits, but we should try to lift them up. But all this got lost due to the influence of Kali Yuga, and therefore this rigid caste system came up. But anyway, Shudras know that untouchable means Chandal, Lecha, Yavan. These are different terms for those untouchable.
Can you please comment on Kriya Yoga and how it relates to Bhakti?
Well, it means what do you mean by Kriya Yoga?
It's one form of yoga.
Yeah, but which Shastra is that in? Where did you hear this term?
One of my friends.
You see, there is some manufactured so-called process called Kriya Yoga, which some bogus guru has invented, and they call it Kriya Yoga. I think, is that some Nirmala Devi or something like that? But that's not the Kriya Yoga given in Shastra. Kriya simply means activity. So Kriya Yoga means Karma Yoga. Practically it means the same thing. That's the Shastric definition. Kriya Yoga also falls within Bhakti. It means practical activities. But you see what's going on in the modern age. In the name of Hinduism, people come out and they take a few terms from Shastra, which they themselves don't properly understand. And they're not... Basically, they want to promote themselves. And they come out and they teach something. Just like yoga all over the world, they're teaching yoga. And people think yoga is something for health. But it's not. It's meant for spiritual development. And the health, these exercises are only meant as preparatory, as a preparation, so that the body can be very calm and controlled when one is meditating. It's only meant for meditation. And meditation is meant, dhyana avastita tadgatena manaso pajanti yam yogina. It's meant for meditating on Vishnu. So it's ultimately, all this yoga is meant for Vishnu Bhakti. But in the name of yoga, people just think it's something for losing weight so you can have better sex. It's just a complete perversion of the real thing. That's why I was asking you, what do you mean by Kriya Yoga? Yeah. So there's some not very prominent Hindu group. I mean, they have branches in different parts of the world, but not known very well, who talk about Kriya Yoga. But it's not the original. For a start, we don't find in Shastra that Kriya Yoga is... We find Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, then Ashtanga Yoga, of which Hatha Yoga is part, and Bhakti Yoga. These are the principal systems. And other yogas may be spoken of. But Kriya Yoga is not a major system in and of itself. But Kriya Yoga is... The word Kriya, it simply means activity. It means it's more or less a synonym of karma. So, Karma Yoga, that's understood in different ways. But there are various levels of Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga can also be understood as part of Bhakti Yoga. As activity performed for the pleasure of Vishnu. Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yad jahosi, tadasi, yad tapasyasi, kaunteya, tat kurushva madarpanam. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, everything you do, everything that you eat, any charity that you give, any austerities that you perform, that should be done as an offering to me. And what other people call Kriya Yoga, why should we take it seriously? Just because they say so. We have to refer to Shastra and to the great Acharyas. Not that you just pick up one or two things from Shastra and present it as if it's something very authorized. There's so many bogus things going on in the name of Hinduism. Yeah.
What is the significance of the word Om?
What is the significance of the word Om? Well, there are 3 syllables there. A-U-M. So these can be understood in different ways. The topmost understanding is that this refers to Krishna, Radha and all the jivas. Generally, Om is taken as a meditational sound by which one considers oneself to be one with the Supreme. But a more complete understanding of Om is as an invocation to the Supreme Lord. Therefore we say, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Narasimhaya. Various forms of the Lord are worshipped by the syllable Om. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhupada, please accept my obeisance. Amongst millions of people in this world, only a handful become Krishna conscious. What determines who becomes Krishna conscious?
What determines who becomes Krishna conscious? Well, it's not a lottery. Those who are fortunate will come, but it's not a lottery. Shraddhavanjan hoy bhakti adhikari. One who has shraddha, that is the eligibility for entering into bhakti. But that shraddha, that will arise in a person who generally will arise, there are two conditions. Generally, a person who in previous lives, who has had contact with bhakti, then when they come in contact with devotees, they will take it seriously. So generally there are two things. One thing, in previous lives, some contact with bhakti. It's a development from previous lives. If in a previous life, if one was inclined toward bhakti, but hadn't taken it very seriously or hadn't completed the course, then in this life, he again takes it up. Tatratang buddhi sangyogam, what is that? Yajanti purvadekam. That one who in a previous life performed yoga, again, when he comes in contact with it in this life, he again picks up from where he took off. But to pick up, that means we have to come in contact with devotees. So devotees, they go everywhere and they preach and try to get people interested in bhakti. And some people take it up very seriously. Some people not seriously. Some people not interested at all. Some people a little bit interested. But the people who are a little bit interested in this life, then they may get an opportunity in the next life and take it up more. So it's a progression. Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita that Yeshang Tvantagatang Papang Jananang Punya Karmanam Tedanva Mohanir Mukta Bhajante Mang Dridhavrataha. Who takes up worshipping Krishna very seriously? A person who in previous lives and in this life, they're free from the sinful reactions of past lives and previous lives, and who are free from the duality of delusion in thinking in terms of I, me and mine. So it's a progression from previous lives, and by the mercy of devotees who give us the opportunity in this life. And even in some cases, one may have no previous contact with bhakti, but just by the powerful mercy of a great pure devotee, even persons who are very sinful or a long way from bhakti may take it up very seriously. Ultimately, we have to choose. What do we want? What do you want? What do you want in your life? Those who are intelligent, they will think, well, we want the best thing possible. What is that? The best thing possible is to achieve the highest bliss eternally that is possible in service to Krishna. We all desire to be happy. There's nothing wrong in desiring to be happy. We're not saying be miserable. Stop eating meat. I don't want to stop eating meat. Well, we'll give you something better, Krishna Prasad. We're not saying be happy. Everyone wants to be happy, but we should understand that we can actually only be happy when we stop thinking about our own happiness and think, how can I serve Krishna? How will He be happy? And then our real happiness arises when we stop thinking, I will enjoy, and we start thinking, how can I act in a manner that Krishna will enjoy? The greatest bliss actually comes not from we think, let me make myself very comfortable. But when we stop thinking how to make myself comfortable and think that my own comfort doesn't matter, I have to serve Krishna, comfortable or not, we don't deliberately make ourselves uncomfortable. But if we're prepared to undertake all difficulties in Krishna's service, you'll find that that is the highest happiness. Yeah, anything else, please? Well, if there are no more questions, then we can experience the happiness of honoring Krishna Prasadam. And as I was saying, you have to undergo difficulties in Krishna's service. Presently, I'm undergoing the difficulty of needing to leave this room for a few minutes and visit the restroom. So had to stay because I had to answer all your